Hey,
Bitcoin
hey,
Liberty Live, connecting remotely. I'm in
again.
Idaho. You're up in Washington.
Washington. Yeah, we're taking over the
How's
Pacific Northwest. I don't know.
any?
Is Idaho part of the Pacific Northwest? I think they like to lump themselves in there, but I always consider them a mountain state.
Yeah, we're in the Mountain Time Zone, and they like to think of themselves as the west of the Rockies, right on the end of the west of the Rockies. There.
Yeah,
It's not the Pacific Northwest, though. That's for sure. It's much
yeah.
drier. But I grew up out here.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I was reading your comic book thing, man.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I saw it
creative.
sitting on the couch. I'd sort of forgotten about it, and I was like, oh yeah, was sort of thumbing through it. Pretty
Yeah,
interesting, man.
that was all from literally. I'm in my old the bedroom I spent that time in, and my memories in the backyard and the hills right here. That inspired that little comic book I wrote.
Nice.
High school.
Yeah, looks like a pretty good high school life.
Yeah. So last this earlier this summer, we had our high school reunion, which is weird to think of like a 30th high school reunion. It's the first one
Jeez.
I ever been to.
Oh, you went?
I hadn't gone to any of them, and I went to this one because I had friends that were saying, "You have to come. You never been to one," and I was kind of like,
Yeah.
"Okay." And then quickly I realized like I don't need to go to these. Um, my graduating class was darn near 500 people,
Yeah.
and it was a crowd of like 100 and something people. And I realized I don't know really any of these people.
Yeah.
And it's been 30 years. And so you can kind of catch up or be like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. And even so, when my close friends, we went out more specifically and catching up on our lives and what we do.
Yeah.
But and so similar experience here with Thanksgiving or whatever. Conversations meander around current events and history and politics and big picture stuff, and
Yeah.
you know, and for me, it's like they're talking about issues in the world or things going on or the cost of things and whatever.
Yeah.
And it for me, I always kind of bring it into like it's the money. It's the
Yeah. Have you heard
money.
about Bitcoin?
Yeah, and I have mentioned Bitcoin, but
Yeah.
I've long learned that they're only at a certain level of the path, and I can't push on them more, or they just think I'm
Yeah.
kookier than they already know I am. And so anyway, but it's come up, and I'll be like, it's the money. Uh, as far as I got with that is effectively like what we're talking about as inflation is a system that does this, and inflation is theft. We're all getting
Right.
eroded upon, and kind of like the liberal mindset of things being like, why couldn't this and that and the other be affordable or be happening, or leaders do this and that and whatever. Now
Yeah.
on one hand it's like, well, is that affordable? On the other hand is, what money are they using, or what money do we have to do that?
Well,
And
they're
as
just
we're looking
deluding
at it,
everybody, right? To do
yeah,
that.
it's the money. It's the
Yeah.
money.
Exactly.
um, so that's as far as I got on my push to an envelope of that inflation is theft.
Yeah.
And I kind of just left it at that. And then I mentioned that Bitcoin is the hardest money asset that we could be using that
Yeah.
fixes that. I mentioned a bit about the great realignment concept of like, it's not some big, like, oh my gosh, it's going to break. It's like, well, there could be a shift happening now that we're seeing, at least I'm aware, happening all over the place in little ways and big ways,
Yeah.
all over.
Yeah.
And like things are getting better, or really the things that are happening that are bad just don't have as much potential future leverage because they're just
Yeah.
not going to work, and there's options. So
Yeah. Yeah. I
anyway,
mean, I think it's an exciting time, even for the people that are still ignorant of what's happening right under their feet, you know. But I was kind of thinking about it. Like, I was talking to my brother-in-law. I guess he's my brother-in-law, right? I don't know, sister's husband. That's a brother-in-law, right?
mm-hmm.
But I was saying, I mean, just think about like our generation, Gen Xers. Like all the sort of transformative change we've seen. And he kind of came back with this, like, well, I think it's always been that way. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like,
This is
uh,
pretty new.
yeah, this is astonishingly new, but it was, you know, I mean, it's something to think about, right? Like you go, well, yeah, every generation has some big change in it, but I think if you looked at like the generation in 1700 and then the generation in 1800 and said, how different is your life? They go, what do you mean? Right? Like they're still farming, they still got a horse, they still got a cart, they got, you know, they got to go dig up soil, and maybe nails got easier to make or something like that, or they finally got a blacksmith in town, or who knows, right? But I don't think there was like this massive sea change. But if you take somebody from 1900 and plunk them down in New York today, they're just like, what the fuck? I mean, it's like science fiction shit, right?
We were
So,
just talking about that with my
oh,
sister
really?
and my mom. Like an hour ago, we are talking about sort of the pace of human civilization, kind of like slow and steady and growing and growing and growing for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And just
And
in the
then,
last 100 years,
yeah,
let alone the last decade, and then what I see now with Bitcoin, like Bitcoin's effective percolation in the minds of everybody, like what, in the last 10 years, maybe?
yeah, yeah,
For most, more like 5 years if you felt early. And it's this quickening and it's an explosion. It's this Permian, what do they call that? The Permian explosion?
yeah, I think so.
Um, it's, it's blowing up. And so on our frame of pace of seeing things change, it sort of feels like it's just kind of slow or normal. But in the context of human history, it's an explosion.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally like kind of a flat line and then boing, you know. So yeah, yeah, it's the sea change as far as I'm concerned. But you know, my brother-in-law didn't see that way. But he's also kind of a contrarian. Like I could literally be like, "Hey, dude, I think this guy is pretty blue." He's like, "Oh, you know, I don't think so." But I think like me and my sister are kind of contrarians too. So who knows? I mean, it's just a whole cluster of contrarians running around just bickering about nonsense.
I've got that here for sure. I think it's a trained mindset a lot of people have. You know,
Yeah,
when you're, if you're wringing your hands over recent politics or whatever, and you can just say, well, we're doomed to death and taxes.
yeah,
And it's like, maybe not.
yeah. Well,
I sense this golden age coming.
yeah. Well, I'm actually kind of surprised about the amount of fatalism that is present, especially in like
Fatalism.
the super liberal side, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's like I mean, I think a lot of people in the modern age are pretty fatalistic, you know, just
Yeah.
like everything sucks, everything's going to get worse, we can't do anything, we're powerless, we're helpless, and this and that. And yet, when I was like talking to my sister and my brother in law, like they're still bent out of shape about Trump and, you know, this and that and the other thing. And I'm like, but they're still wrapped up like they're they're going, well, there's like a literal Nazi in the White House now, kind of stuff. I'm like, do you really? But they I mean, this stuff has been so crammed into their heads, right? Like, and that's the only exposure they've had to anything. And like I was talking to my nephew about Robert Kennedy Jr., right? And the second I said, yeah, I was going to vote for Robert Kennedy Jr., and he went, oh God, oh my God, I can't believe you, and I mean, just like lost his shit. And I was kind of like,
Hmm.
you're I mean, a he's 23 years old, so he's kind of full of piss and vinegar, and they're when you're 20 something, you've got all kinds of opinions about shit you don't understand, myself included. I was the same way, but
I was. Yeah.
yeah, 100%. And yet I was looking at it, and I'm like, so you've known me for 50 years, dude, and you're willing to just throw all that experience with me out the window and just assume that I'm a lunatic now because I disagree with your point of view, right?
Yeah.
And it's sort of it's a disturbing trend, right? And I see it a lot. I mean, I know the righties kind of do it as well because they go, oh, these fucking crazy liberals and this and that and the other thing. And I go, well, I mean, you can't just like discount half the country because you disagree with their point of view.
Yeah.
And but yet I also agree, like their point of view has been massively manipulated and sort of constructed for them, and I don't think they're aware of it. But the right sort of has the same sort of angles on it, but it's just less pervasive, I think, right? Like, especially
Hmm.
now, because what passes for the modern right now is not like Dick Cheney's Republican Party, Like
No.
Dick Cheney's a Democrat now, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Well, it's
And
like, it's like that thing. It's like there is no red, there is no blue, there is the
there is the
state, and
state,
there's you.
there is, yeah,
And
exactly.
so the left and the right both pretend like they have these, meaningful differences, but literally they're both deep state and pro
Yeah.
war, and
Well, I don't know. I
so
mean, I think with this populist sort of revolution in the Republican Party now, I mean, like Trump ushered it in, and I don't think he was ever. I mean, I know he rode in as a populist type candidate, but that was just, I think, through sheer bluster and just plain talk, right? But I don't think he had any sort of ideological orientation towards anything. I think just whatever's the most convenient path for him to achieve whatever goal he's going for, right? And that he tapped into something that I think he didn't expect. I don't think the political punditry class expected. I don't think the media expected. I don't think anybody expected.
yeah,
But he just like plugged straight in and just boom took off, right? And and I think now 8 years into his development as a human being in a massive position of power, I think has kind of shifted that tone a little bit, right? Because that first administration he brought in, they were just deep space dirtbags, right? But now the folks he's picking now are kind of interesting and unique sort of personalities to bring into these positions. But I think it's a really different sort of Republican Party now.
yeah,
And it's certainly not the Republican Party that the Democrats are vilifying, right? And that I think is their greatest weakness right now because, like, when I hear the stuff my sister's saying and my brother in law, my nephews, I mean, they're all like deep blue Seattle, you know, tech industry people, right? And it's just like you can just hear the media talking points. Like it's just like, "Brock, here's my talking point, Brock,"
yeah,
and you go like, really? You can't hear that, can you? And they just nope, they believe it. I mean, it's just like sunk in there. So I'm like, all right,
yeah.
well,
The programs are coded in hard.
yeah, the Borg has infiltrated, man, deep. They got the little laser beam eyes and stuff.
And I think it's easy right now on the heels of a loss and grappling with feelings around that, that you make a caricature over Trump and then whatever you believe his pirate ship looks like. I think over time, as things change, or as they roll things out and do stuff, and it's like, say, good for the economy, macro generally, or pro-American at least, and maybe things get better, or like, fentanyl is just not flowing across the border like it was because the cartels are like, you know, yeah, you're
Yeah,
on notice, or the Mexican government, or Chinese or other tariffs and all that. I think things could just change, and this could, you could frame that as like, oh, how bad it is, but I
right,
think over time, I think it's going to be hard to ignore that maybe things get better. They'll always
right,
be politicized, but at one level, even with money printing, things could get better. And
right,
then at another level, with Bitcoin, things can just be getting better. And
right.
awareness about aspects and origins of money and how economics could work. I can just see improvements steadily taking their course. And then it'll be like, what are you still angst over, or
Right.
how relevant are these issues that you're hanging on to over, Orange Hitler or whatever? They're just not going to mean much.
Yeah.
I have it here with, largely with my family as well, of course, and um, some of them it's just, it's they're stuck forever. It's just nope. They made up their minds. They know, and they'll always frame it from that.
Right.
But I think it's going to be hard to ignore that maybe stuff gets better.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I
but
mean, I think there's going to be a tidal shift here, and it's going to be pretty remarkable, right? Like, kind of watching how this whole thing plays out and how everything develops from here, because yeah, the status quo is toxic as shit, man. Like, and I don't know why people are fighting so hard to hang on to that status quo,
I
And
was pretty. Go ahead.
I don't know. I was just gonna say like the people that were like somehow got on board with Kamala Harris. I was like,
Oh
how?
God.
How can you possibly? Because I see a lot of Harris Wall stickers around here and stuff. I'm just like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? Like, how could you possibly look past all the shenanigans that were going on to instill that quote unquote candidate onto that ballot and still vilify the people, because I started talking, I was like, well, the Democrats had a choice for a real candidate. They go, oh, yeah, Bernie Sanders. I'm like, no, Robert Kennedy. What? Brainworm, crazy, blah, blah, blah. It was just like, Have you ever heard the guy talk? Oh, I've heard him talk, but they always hear little clips, that they hear on the Stephen Colbert Report or you know, some HBO fucking John what's his face show, and
Yeah.
but they're always like just a little slice of a thing that people use for comedic effect so they can shit on the guy's head, and it's like, well, but you've never really sat down and listened to what the guy had to say, and I would find it challenging for anybody to not sit down and listen to one of his speeches and go, yeah, I agree with most of what this guy is saying, but they'll go and cherry pick all this weird little shit, and they're more than happy to do it, like without any further context, without any further information. They'll just dive into this stuff, and it's like literal NPCs, dude. Like it's
Yeah.
sort of frightening in a way, but what are
Well,
you
and
gonna
I
do?
can, you know, when I make the effort to relate to it and bridge the gap for conversation's sake, I get it because, um, for 20 years when I was in my mid 20s, starting when I was in my mid 20s, and it started with the 2000 election, this election, and quickly, well, shortly after that, 9/11, and then all the wars we got into, and then all the wars we never hardly heard about or remember anymore, and all the central banking stuff from, um, you know, Iraq and what's going
Afghanistan.
on in Syria, and then
Yeah.
Gaddafi with Libya, and everything else, and it started to connect with me. And then I went from just being angry liberal, which really was anti-war and anti-deep state, but I
Right.
shifted more to just straight up. I'm seeing it's not left and right; it's the state, and I became more of a, I didn't know what I was, but kind of libertarian, just anti-deep state.
Right.
But I had no solution, so I was just angry. I was just angry at a system that will never change. Like, don't even vote. It's whatever.
Yeah.
And so for me, like literally, I think Bitcoin galvanized. It was a hinge moment for me. Bitcoin fixed my brain in terms of, here is a fix. It starts with the money, and
Right.
from that trickles out all the other stuff. And even though some of it was conceptual for me early on at the time, just sort of like, yes, theoretically, Bitcoin could do all this. And then over the years, as it's filling in cracks and widening cracks and doing it,
Yeah.
I see where this is going, and that's where now I just feel like I feel so much excited, happier
Right.
for the potential we have, and that there's no stopping the train. And companies that want to hold on to the stuff also can't ignore what's going to work and are like, well, we don't want to be last,
Right. Yeah.
or at least
And yeah. Well, I was just on a Spaces yesterday, a day before with Justin, and and I mean that was one of the. I mean the conversation went all over the place. Like the Spaces went on for like 3 hours, almost 4 hours. I was only there for about an hour in the beginning, but that was one of the things I brought up as well. Is just like there's uh, in terms of rates of adoption, because they're talking about corporate adoption, what MicroStrategy is doing, and that's always kind of a hot topic these days.
yeah,
And I just look at it and I go, there is going to cross some sort of Rubicon, some threshold is going to get crossed very shortly, where people are just like, if we don't do this, we're screwed. Like we have
hmm
to do this. It's a matter of survival. It's just like there go all the life rafts, and I'm just going to hang out on the Titanic. I just refuse to look at anything. I'm not even going to try to get on the lifeboat. And I think that becomes untenable pretty fast, right? Like I think people just go, oh yeah, oh well, my feet are wet. Yeah, maybe lifeboat's a better idea. Like just without even. I mean, it becomes, if it's a matter of survival, then that adoption curve, that power law shit just gets blown out of the water, overnight,
hmm
because that S curve suddenly just goes zip, and
yeah,
and all your models will be destroyed. Suddenly becomes very very relevant, but I don't
yeah,
know, man. I think the future is bright, but in terms of talking about politics and stuff, I feel really blessed now because my dad was like a hardcore libertarian, right? Like he had a picture of Ayn Rand on the wall when I was a little kid,
wow,
and so I grew up like when I was about 8 or 9. Like I realized during the Iraq War that like the political opinions of most people that I run into are the same general caliber as the political opinions I had when I was 8, right? Because when I was 8 is when the Iranians took over the embassy in Tehran, the
Yeah.
U.S. embassy, right? And they took all those hostages and they're holding them for years, and they had that bungled rescue mission and all this kind of stuff. But I remember saying to people out loud when I was like 8 or 9 years old, like, why don't we just go nuke them? You know, like, why don't we just do this? And how come we have to do that? You know, like just these really base, sort of ignorant kind of positions on like how we should deal with some perceived problem in the Middle East, you know. And never mind, it's because we deposed the leader over there and we were trying to get access to the oil, and then the revolution came because of that, and it probably never would have happened had we just allowed their government to flourish, and had we not been trying to protect big oil interests and this and that and the other thing. But then I also had that Ayn Rand influence of like, because she wrote about stuff like these countries that nationalize oil fields and stuff like that, they just go in, they don't have the expertise to run them, these things end up breaking down and they stop working right. And so, it's that kind of yin yang push pull about like who develops what and is able to exploit property and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there's, more layers to it than like a straight libertarian perspective can accommodate. Just like I think there's more layers than a conservative perspective could accommodate, or a communist Marxist perspective. I mean, there's little bits and bobs of each that kind of make sense on some level. But yeah, my whole life after that, like I'd push back on my dad when I was 8 or 9. By the time I was like 14 or 15, I was reading Atlas Shrugged and shit, like, and I was going
Hmm.
around telling people in high school about the gold standard, and so like I had this like really nice long on ramp into like by the time Bitcoin came around, I'm like, yeah, I get this. But by
Yeah.
then, my political ideology had sort of shifted as well because I'd gone to law school, and I was starting to look at the world in a more balanced, sort of nuanced fashion, right? Where it's you can't just have straight, unfettered, because people go, oh, we need a free market. And I go, well, yeah, you want that until someone sells you a lawnmower that explodes in your face and you can't do anything about it, right?
Right.
And so it's been kind of a fun journey, but I'm really blessed that in terms of overcoming, like, we need to smash the bank and we need to do, like those were low hurdles for me. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
'cause that was baked in early. And so by the
Yeah.
time I'm here now, it's just kind of like, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, smash the state, sure. Like, that's a no brainer. Whereas other people have to overcome that. Like, wait a minute, we like this thing, and it's like, So I don't
Right.
know. Kind of
Yeah.
fortunate.
Bitcoin found fertile ground in my political psyche when it came. I was just I would have been ready so earlier. I just in some senses I had the fertile ground ready to go, and then I just didn't connect or discover Bitcoin until much later. But then again, when it did click for me, when when I'm with my family or other people in general, and I realize, my God, people do not understand, or they've got a long way to go to
Yeah,
really
yeah.
understand or feel it. And then that was reinforced, God, yesterday, day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday.
Oh God, yeah.
I was like, I would not ever go out. It's like my anti-shopping day.
Right, yeah. Last place
But
on earth I want to be.
my wife had this fun adventure idea that I was good for because, like, I just consider, well, it'll be an adventure.
Yeah,
And my daughter she'd heard of this Build a Bear, little build your own little teddy bear kind of a store. Which there's a Build a Bear in the mall here in
oh
town,
God,
and
oh
I was braced for it. I'm like, okay, we're gonna go to Build a Bear at the mall on Black Friday,
yeah.
knowing what the traffic and everything else is gonna be like. Part of me is like, do people still go to the mall? Like, are malls still really a popular thing? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it'll be busy. Oh my God, it was crazy,
Yeah,
like ridiculous.
yeah,
Parked out parking lot. I hadn't been in this mall in decades.
yeah.
When I was a kid, when they built it, I'd been there, sure, but it was a zoo, and just thinking Fiat, Fiat, Fiat. There were lines waiting to get into certain stores for what who knows what, and we're going to Build a Bear, but it was like Disneyland. It was crowds of people navigating hallway after hallway, trying to get around storefronts, people everywhere.
Yeah.
And you imagine the people watching and the kinds of people you see out shopping. Of course, that's always interesting. But so we do our Build-A-Bear thing, and that's fun. That's for our 3-year-old daughter. It was
Right.
cute, and she built a
Yeah.
bear
Yeah.
and took it home. We've got a cute little princess bear she made, and it's her favorite little thing now. But getting in and getting out and the traffic and everything about the whole scene, it was the sickest kind of Fiat like deal catching you're doing.
Right.
Um, and a lot of people are in that world. And when I was younger, I would get captured by that, just the mentality of it, or like here's a thing that was $150 and it's marked down to 100. It's a deal.
Right.
Versus, would I ever want to spend $100 on that thing just cause? No,
Yeah.
but I'm in this like hunter gatherer frame of
Yeah.
mind where everyone
Spirit.
else is hunting
Yeah.
and gathering, and I'm gonna get mine, and I'm buying crap, buying crap I don't need.
Yeah. Well, there was some gal on Twitter that said she was tracking Amazon prices and said she noticed a spike in prices like a month ago. And then the Black Friday deals are like all the just
And they're
bringing
all
it back.
deals.
Yeah. Well, they're no, I mean, it just brought it back to retail prices, right?
Normal,
Like, yeah.
right,
So it brought it back to like September prices by the time they got to November, you know?
right,
And it's just like, I mean, it's all such a hustle and it's all, but I mean, most of this stuff is trash and garbage anyway, right? Like, it's all, like, I opened my sister's fridge. It's a brand new house. I mean, the house is like 3, 4 years old, 5 years old, maybe. I don't know. Brand new modern appliances, this, that, and the other thing. And the fridge is already like rah, 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 making like this weird noise. I'm like, this thing's like 4 years old. Like, we
wow,
had refrigerators, like my grandmother had a refrigerator from the 1950s and the 1980s, and it was just chugging along fine, you know.
yeah,
And today, man, these things, I mean, they're allegedly more efficient and better at, you know, I mean, they don't use as much power, obviously, but Christ, they're just pieces of crap, dude. And, you know, all these electronics and all these doodads and widgets in there. It's just like, can't you just keep your food cold? Like, I have
yeah,
this like distant fantasy of like creating a car company where I just make a very simple car that's got like manual hand crank, you know, window things and like actual gauges for speed and nothing else, you know, like maybe enough to let you know if it's overheating or the oil pressure is dropping. But I feel like you could design something like that and just make like a simple, robust, you know, not like huge performance anything, just something that'll get you around forever and
yeah,
still have some safety features to it, right? Like crash bags, those are pretty good. You know, crash cage, pretty good. Crumple zones, pretty good. These are all great things because people don't die as much when you get hit, right? But then, I mean, if you just strip out all the rest of the nonsense and all the plushy this and the buttons and the doodads and the satellite this and the fucking lane change, blah, 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 I feel like you could probably produce a car in the United States for about 12 grand, you know, and sell it
it
for 15 and be a happy
it'll
guy.
run forever. You could fix it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And just, you know,
that
I mean,
the AK-47 of,
yeah, the AK
you know,
47 of automobiles, right?
it's
Like,
wet, it's rusty, it's muddy, it
and it
got
starts.
dropped, it
Yeah.
it, it
You go.
will it'll ratchet.
Yeah, exactly. You just keep going anyway. So I just don't know why we don't have more of that kind of industry in the world. Like as much as people sort of long for a more simple life and a more simplistic way of doing things, I'm amazed that we don't have like, here's your robust toaster, right? Like, what's this? It's super simple. It toasts bread and it never breaks. Like we
Yeah.
have over-engineered this thing to the moon, so you can buy one toaster, and 50 years from now, your kids can still make toast with it, and it'll
Hmm.
do just fine. And
It
I think there's
just
enough
doesn't.
technology advancement that you could make that work, right? So I don't
Hmm.
know, but
Yeah, and yeah, well, and there's even as far as like planned obsolescence of like, oh yeah, they'll just stop, they'll crap out after 10 years, and you just buy a new one.
all right,
The new one's always better anyway, and
yeah,
it's also fiat, really.
yeah, it's gross.
Just our what we're used to.
That's what I should name my new company. It would be planned lessons, not obsolescence, but lessons. It just lasts forever. I mean, because like that's the way that's what made America amazing. Is like we built cheap, reliable, good shit. You know that just lasted forever, and it's like people wanted that. And I feel like there's still a market for it, so we'll see.
Yeah. When I use the word I use the word Fiat, and my mom's like, the car, like the Fiat car.
Yeah.
Well, no, but
Well,
no,
some
Fiat.
Fiat actually, the car company responded to somebody like, "What did we ever do?"
Yeah, right. What's
Like
so wrong with
responded.
Fiat?
Yeah, like I mean, Fiats are pieces of shit. Let's be honest. But
I don't know how well they keep running. I guess they people keep them running in Eastern Europe or whatever.
well, no, it's
Um,
an Italian company, isn't it?
is it Italian? Shit, I
I
don't
think
even
they're
know.
Italian. I mean, they're
Probably.
like hot garbage, dude. Like, um, like but like Jeep, like the Jeep Compass is a Fiat. Like if you go
Mm.
to Europe and buy a Jeep Compass, it's a Fiat something or another.
Hmm.
And I'm always amazed that like people are like, "Oh, I'm going to go buy a Jeep." I'm like, "You're buying a goddamn Fiat, dude. Like, you sure you want that car?"
Hmm.
Like, Fiat's not exactly world renowned for its reliability. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
always amazed that people buy anything but a Toyota. Hey, is your Tesla a Founders Edition? Do you have that badge on there?
Foundation, yeah, yeah,
Foundation? Oh,
yeah. The
it's a
foundation.
oh, I thought it was like a Founders thing, but it's a foundation thing.
Well, yeah, the first iteration they made of it was the foundation series.
Oh, gotcha.
So
So you're part of
yeah,
the foundation.
yeah,
You're cemented in.
yeah. Now it comes with all the extras that when things come for it or whatever, it just comes with it, which is nice.
Yeah.
But nice
Did you
as it
take it to
is,
Idaho?
what's that?
Did you take it to Idaho?
Yeah, yeah, it's here.
Nice.
Yep. It and
You got to plug it
nice
in
thing
the
about
wall.
it, nice as it is, it is high commodity fiat. But then again, it drove us to Idaho. I mean
Yeah.
it drove.
Yeah.
So there, it's nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to
Yeah.
be taking the old Oregon to New Mexico route. I don't know where I'm going to route that through. Like in about 2 weeks, right? So the thing is, like, by the mileage, you could probably do it in 2 days, but just the prospect of driving 12 hours a day for 2 days just sounds awful to me for whatever reason. So might turn it into like a 3 or 4 day trip. I don't know, but yeah, but I guess we'll see how the Toyota performs, right? Little monster truck Prius.
Yeah, there's some nice country to if you head south through if you went through Utah or Moab and heck if you wanted to Zion or
Yeah,
on south. My boy and I when we headed that way, we actually we went through Albuquerque and then turned left and headed east and went through Moab and near Zion and cheap little hotel just south of Moab. Uh, it was cool. Yeah,
nice.
nice, cool country out there.
Yeah, did you guys
Four
stop and look
Corners.
at anything?
What's that?
Did you stop and look at anything,
Yeah,
or did you drive through?
like we went to Four Corners and um, my boy's into that show or classic old now show Breaking Bad, and so in
Oh
of
yeah,
course Albuquerque and all that.
yeah,
So we went to the house where they filmed Walter White's house is literally in a
yeah, like
neighborhood.
the Pizza House. Yeah,
Yeah, saw that house and saw the statue of Walter and the tweaker kid,
yeah,
um, and which is in the convention center there. And anyway, on our way, yeah, we ended up we headed on east to Texas. World War II Museum, the Alamo,
oh damn,
uh, Houston Space Center, all kinds of cool stuff.
yeah. So
And
you
it was,
turned it into like an actual trip.
yeah, we
It
saw a
wasn't
lot. It
just
was
a
cool.
destination thing. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm kind of like I went the first time I routed it down. Like it's all just like back 2 lane highways and shit. And I'm like, I'm not driving for 3 days on 2 lane highways. Like I feel like that's a great way to get in a head-on collision. So
Some of the roads in Texas were pretty nice, despite say random toll booth things they have going on there. But New Mexico, some of the we went in like Four Corners area, and I guess maybe we're off the beaten path a little bit in places. But man, some of the roads were horrible,
oh yeah,
rough.
dude, it's
Not
like the
not that
second poorest state in the country, right
God.
behind Mississippi.
I get used to the roads in Oregon, Washington, Idaho. I mean, they just there's construction, but they're like reasonable, good quality. And then in Utah,
Yeah,
and we hit New Mexico, and it was just like what? Like even on part of a freeway, it was just like gugum, gugum, gugum.
yeah,
It's like what?
yeah.
And you
It's
get
all
off
garbage.
that at all, and it's like some rough roads. Like when's the last time they paved this? Whatever, I don't know.
Well,
But
what's funny is New Mexico ranked number one for spending federal highway funds and number
hmm,
50 for road quality. So they're
okay,
really good at like soaking up money and then distributing it to their buddies. I mean, it's such a
huh,
it's well, it's like anywhere that's poor.
hmm,
Um, the people at the top always just steal as much as they can. Like it's true in the states as it is true in the countries. It's like you're a poor state, commodity poor, commerce poor. People just pilfer whatever they can out of the coffers and line their pockets. I mean, it's so corrupt, dude. It's nasty. But yeah, I
yeah.
mean, it's like they used to call it. I remember there was like two things that really stand out from my memories of New Mexico. Is one governor threatened to call it the Orange Barrel State because, like, just no matter what, it was constant. Everywhere you go, there's constant construction that's never done. Because
So
people,
endless, yeah.
yeah, just endless, socialist projects of endless bureaucracy, endless grift, and endless waste. And then there was another guy who, if they didn't pass some legislation about drunk driving, the guy said, "I'm going to put up a sign at all the freeway entrances to the state that say, 'Welcome to New Mexico, the drunk driving capital of the world.'"
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a fun place. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the first place that ever got nuked in the world, so that's something, right?
Yeah. Randomly, I saw that Oppenheimer film uh,
Oh, how was it?
last week. It's a slow burn, and there's things about it where it's very much it's very stylized and well produced, and the feel you get out of it is cool as a slow burn. But it's
Yeah.
like I wanted to know more about the science of stuff, and they kind of turned into all this little human drama stuff that was like,
Right. Yeah.
whatever, Hollywood. But it's just interesting to think about, the that era of like kind of maybe for the first time ever after World War II, this massively secretive project um, that was building our modern uh, intelligence apparatus in a way. Um,
Yeah.
uh, Interesting, like just to see that grow and how sort of relatively quickly that all exploded, and then the first nuke test and all that. But
Yeah.
um, that was sort of just setting a foundation for like
What's to
everything
come?
else that's been secret
Yeah.
ever since.
Yeah. That's the birthplace of Dick Cheney.
And then from that we
Nice
get
little.
just
Yeah.
the those guys,
Yeah.
neocon, everything.
Well,
Um,
I heard a interview with a British intelligence guy, and he's an old school guy, but he said, you need an intelligence agency. So that's the intelligence people are the people that are supposed to go and implement policy that you can't talk about, right? And you go, okay, well, in a competitive resource capture economy, that kind of makes sense. You need to have people that can go and execute policy. But he said the problem is now governments are so paralyzed they don't have clear policies. So these guys just start creating their own policies and they go and enforce their ideas. And he said, so that's how you end up with a shadow government and shadow policy and shadow. I mean, these guys are just going out and creating chaos, and no one's really there to rein them in because the politics is so broken, because the money is so broken. So, it's like this great big convoluted mess. But it'll be interesting to see what the Trumpers do with the intelligence community and stuff like that. Like, I guess I read a headline that said Trump was bypassing the FBI to do the vetting for his cabinet members and stuff like
yeah,
that,
I heard
because they're
that.
so yeah. I mean, I don't know how much merit there is to it, but
Well, I wonder how, like, maybe you can overhaul things like the FBI or the Department of Justice and things like that. But Elon and Vivek with their Department of Governmental Efficiency and all that,
yeah,
I imagine them coming in and just having leeway to hit hard and cut hard and do all this stuff.
yeah,
And you think about what Congress runs into when they try to, you try to audit the Defense Department or the Pentagon or even the FBI.
Right.
and they can't account for a majority of their budget at all.
Right. It's just
And
yeah.
where do you even
No one cares.
start? Yeah, where do you even start? And can you pierce that? If you have a ranking Senate member and at the head of the defense committee going in to get to the bottom of something, and they don't have the clearance, and they're just
Right.
like, nope, sorry. And it's like,
Yeah.
what? Whose government is this?
Yeah.
Um,
I think
who?
Matt Getz ran into that, right? Like he showed up
Yeah.
at one of these like UFO sites, and he said this general guy or somebody was like, "You can't come in." He's like, and he said I had a big long discussion with him to explain what authority is and where it flows from, you know. But I interrupted you. What were you saying?
Well, yeah, just that same thing of like, how do you cut what you don't even know what is?
Right. Yeah.
Or, I mean, I don't know where it's going, but in my mind, it'll take years and years of hatcheting away at stuff. But how do they even get to the deepest trenches of what we don't know exists?
Right.
I
I
mean, you
mean,
could
it's
say the UAP area of all of it, the secret technology, or stuff held in private companies. The government can say we don't have anything. Who
right.
has it? Well, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, DynCorp, whoever,
Raytheon.
Raytheon.
Yeah.
They're not government. They do what they want. Um, I don't know. How do you pierce that?
I have no idea. I mean, I think they've got a monumental task in front of them, and I'd be surprised if they could cut any money, but we'll see what happens. You know, like they keep like Elon is thinking, what did he say? He's going to cut 2 trillion. You go, good luck with that, buddy. Like, I mean, there's so many structural and legal barriers in place to that kind of stuff. Like, it's just all. I mean, you're just going to be in court for your entire duration of Trump's presidency. All this shit's going to be in court. So you go, well, how much? You know, and then the next administration comes along, and God knows who that's going to be. And so that's one of the short-sighted sort of failings of our system, or it's working as intended, right? Like, I mean, if you go back and look at the way they set up the structure of this thing, like they said, you need a two-thirds majority to change the Constitution. And why would you put that in? Because you want it nearly impossible to tinker with that document. You know, to get two-thirds of people on board with anything, you know, just try and figure out what movie you're going to see tonight, and try and get a two-thirds majority. And it's just like, can't we just agree on one? You know, I mean, like people just sit there and bicker about shit just cause. So
Yeah.
and then if you have people with entrenched interests and incentives to cockblock things, and I mean it's going to be a mess, man. So we'll see.
Yeah, and there's certainly low hanging fruit they can start with and show some good return on.
Right.
But as it goes, getting deeper and deeper with it, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
it's going to get hard.
Yeah. Well, it's Leviathan, right? I mean, it's just like this huge bureaucratic apparatus that how you unpack that kind of thing is sort of a big mess. I don't really think you do unpack it. I think, which is kind of traces back to like the Bitcoin conversation. It's like I think the faster way to fix that problem is not by going in and engaging in conflict and trying to carve things out of the patient, right? I think it's just you just shrink the tumors, and that naturally shrinks if you fix the money, right? Like all these problems kind of just start folding in on themselves if you don't have to, if you're not beholden to a money printer that's diluting everything, right?
Hmm.
And I mean, they'll end up regardless. If it gets better, they'll take credit for it. If it gets worse, they'll blame the last administration. I mean, that's just the playbook, right? So,
Hmm.
but I think what's coming in the next during this administration, I think the Bitcoin um, fix is going to start reverberating through the economy much
Yeah.
much faster than anything Elon Musk could possibly even dream of. So we'll see.
Yeah.
See if my thesis holds up.
Yeah. Well, in the metaphor of the immune system and just a steady healing process, and the cancers, if they don't have the crap energy to grow from, they start to shrink naturally.
Yeah,
And some of that may take time, on its own. But yeah, Bitcoin will fix it. And superficially, like right now, Bitcoin is still so just sort of spring loaded and primed and ready to blow into these areas where there's kind of a cell wall pressure in 99,000 to 100K, holding things flat. But the whole S curve you might imagine we've seen
Yeah.
in the future, that'll look like that was all flat.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
and
I
what?
used to post a chart on Twitter like ages ago where it's like I posted a Bitcoin chart overlaid on an Amazon chart, right? And I showed like the big run up in 2001, and I kind of equated that to, Bitcoin's big run up in 2019 or 2020, right? And but then if you zoom out on the Amazon chart, it's like that 2001 run was like this big on the chart, and then the today's price is like here, right? So
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's the kind of adoption curve we're going to see with Bitcoin moving forward.
yeah,
And I mean, like most of these things, you won't even be able to see 2020 or right now on the chart. It's just going to be, oh, that's where the big S curve started. Like, but that's all
yeah,
it's going to look like. It's just going to be little bumps and then this big zoom, and
yeah,
then the chart is going to start looking very, very different. But you're
hmm
going to have a lot of really rich Bitcoiners. I mean, like
yeah,
kind of stupid rich. Well, I mean, if you think about it, like like MicroStrategy, I should say, has what 300,000 Bitcoin now. So at $1 million a coin, that's 300,000 million dollars. Like,
it's crazy.
yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's madness, dude. Just even conceive of it. So
and as other companies want to follow that model or get in on it and not be last or not be left behind, everything they do in that space grows Bitcoin.
yeah,
And the very fact that MicroStrategy in the model they're doing there with the money glitch thing they got, if you call it that, by being first, I mean, uh, they're at the crest of everything.
yeah, yeah,
As it grows, that's another whole thing. I mean, where that goes, what they do with that, it would be incredible to have this MicroStrategy company that's now a Bitcoin finance company.
right,
Um, they could do anything they want in the entire world,
yeah,
anything they want.
theoretically, yeah. Well, what's odd is like I saw an interview with a guy, Anthony Pompliano. I think that's who it was,
I
but
think I
he
saw
was,
that. He had a really good distilled
yeah, sort of version
explanation.
of what it was, yeah. But then he also was talking about like I can't see what the risk is, and that troubles me. And he says he keeps hearing people saying, "Oh, there's no risk," and he's like, the second I hear that, it's just alarm bells going off like crazy. It's like there's
Yeah,
always a risk. And he
I've
brought up a
criticized.
good theoretical thing. He said, okay, well, theoretically, let's say the United States banned Bitcoin. Like, do you think MicroStrategy stock is going to hold up? Well, obviously not. So it goes, okay, so we can at least identify a risk. It might be 0.000001% risk, but it's there. So certainly there's another risk to this. And, he said the first person that figures out what that risk is, going to be the hotshot. But as I look at it, I mean, I don't know enough about it other than, they're selling equity and they're selling convertible bonds, right?
Yeah,
They're selling equity and they're selling debt and they're buying Bitcoin with it and number go up. So,
yeah, and as a publicly traded company, they have a lot of more. They have a lot more options at hand to cycle it around and around and around,
yeah,
and issue more shares or
yeah,
and then leverage buy the Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin's growth rate is it makes their interest on the loans they might take out minuscule, nothing.
right. Yeah,
As Bitcoin grows, and it's just like, wow. I've criticized. So interestingly, Pomp got me into Bitcoin and like general crypto stuff early, as just he had his podcast going and he was in the space, and I learned a lot from him, and he's very knowledgeable. And he really got into some shitcoin stuff and like talking up, FTX even and stuff.
right.
And I really walked away from him for a good long while, just like, man, he's kind of a shitcoiner.
Yeah,
And but his insights are good. He's very smart, and his talk most recently on the MicroStrategy model was well done. Like he's got a good view on it. Where yes, it's so new and unknown. We're getting our minds around it. Um, you could just say there doesn't seem to be any risk to this. It's just all cyclically uphill all the time.
right.
But he points out, yeah, we don't know what these new risks look like. Um,
Right. Whole new
they're
model.
they're just they're unknowable, but that's not no risk. That's just like we don't know.
Right.
It,
We don't
there don't
understand.
appear to be any real overt risks, but or the risks that exist are well managed through Bitcoin being the future of money.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just we don't know.
Right. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I mean, I think it's going to become more and more of an irrelevant conversation to the broader macro backdrop, just as more and more people adopt things and or adopt Bitcoin, and the more that permeates through the global economy, I think it just a lot of these conversations become sort of like, yeah, but who cares, And if you're a small holder, and because like I can't remember who was. Oh yeah, I was on one of those spaces, and Grant Cardone and Gary Cardone were on, and they were talking about TradFi stuff, and they're talking about like levering real estate and doing this and buying Bitcoin, and when they're going to cash out at their Bitcoin, and I mean, it's all like the thing was is they're all legitimate conversations in the current paradigm, right? Like, and even the MicroStrategy conversation is a legitimate conversation in the current paradigm, but when if Bitcoin truly becomes a base layer monetary unit, and things are being priced and distributed based on the Bitcoin blockchain, then or the time chain, let me say,
Yeah,
then a lot of these conversations start looking a little silly, right? Because you're like, well, I'm able to make infinite fiat with my Bitcoin scheme. And you go, well, what do you need that for, though, right? Like, don't
hmm
you have Bitcoin? Yeah. What do it'd be like it's like someone back in the 1800s going, "Man, I found this amazing way to make wampum." And
hmm
I can use gold and silver to like generate almost infinite amounts of wampum just by recycling this and selling wampum debt, and then you just kind of go, "Yeah, but do you like 50 years from now, are you going to care if you how big your stack of wampum is?" No,
hmm
it's just like it's a infinitely producible thing.
yeah,
So why would you care about it? And I kind of look at it the same way with fiat. Is like you go, "Oh, we're stacking massive amounts of fiat bucks, and we're able to generate massive amounts of fiat cash flows," and you just go, yeah, but it's not going to matter. I think in 5 or 10 years, it's just going to be like
yeah,
there was a transition period where we stacked a lot of fiat so we could stack some more Bitcoin, but now nobody thinks about this stuff anymore. We're just kind of like, are you productive? Yeah, well then you can sustain yourself. Are you not productive? Yeah, well then you're going to struggle a little bit more, and that's it.
yeah. The risk could be down the road is that you're sitting on MicroStrategy stock that did you well, but you're really now everyone's trying to actually have Bitcoin. Like
Right,
really, you want Bitcoin. So how do you convert that into Bitcoin along with everyone else?
right, yeah,
When fiat is going away, and it's that down the road later shift from fiat to Bitcoin, and you're really you just want your Bitcoin and wish you had it earlier,
right.
and you're trying to make that transition. And so, along with everyone else, say the the fiat price is meaningless, the dollar's less meaningful at all. You want your Bitcoin, and everyone's trying to convert to Bitcoin.
All right.
And you never had your Bitcoin. You had this stock that you're trying to convert from fiat to Bitcoin.
Right.
That may be the real risk is that you're sitting on that. You're sitting on a pile of wampum that now you just wish you had the actual
Yeah.
guilders.
Right.
Um,
Exactly. I
so
wish I had my gold coins instead of this. I've got a warehouse full of wampum that nobody wants. Like,
yeah,
good for me. I mean, during the time that you're making all the wampum and people still want wampum, sure. But after that, they just kind of go, oh, well, that's interesting. That's a neat little anachronism from 10 years ago. But we don't really price things in that anymore.
yeah,
So I mean, if you use it as a vehicle to sort of stack your Bitcoin, then good for you, right? But I figure if you have enough money to just lump some Bitcoin right now, rather than smash buying MicroStrategy and trying to get yourself a Ferrari or whatever, it's like, why don't you just smash buy some Bitcoin and just sit on it? And then just keep your day
yeah,
job and just figure it out, because I think you'll be better off in the long run. Maybe. I don't know.
yeah. And
But
Matthew Kretter, he did some good deep dives, like a three-part thing on the MicroStrategy thing, and then just today, like it looks like a few hours ago, he I haven't seen it yet, but his most recent video is MicroStrategy price targets and blow up risk. So that'll be interesting to see. Maybe he's
oh
looking
yeah,
into you know when and how does, I mean, eventually I see with Fiat, MicroStrategy stock blows up. Or, yeah, everyone's trying to convert their wampum into the guilders
Right.
now. So
Right.
who's then first on that or last on that, or you're stuck with all this wampum and you can't get nearly as much Bitcoin anymore.
Yeah.
Wish
Yeah.
you would
Yeah.
have just had Bitcoin.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, I think there's going to be like, if you just start thinking of like sats at dollar parity, you kind of go like, well, how many, like right now, if someone said like, how many dollars do you need to just not really worry about things anymore? You go, I don't know, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, 50 million. I don't know what your number is, right? Where you're not worried about the debasement, you're not worried about taxes, you're not worried about health, you're not worried, like you just kind of go, almost any eventuality I'm covered, right? It's probably, I think for most people, I would guess right now, and I don't know, it's probably 5, 6 million, something like that. There's probably a study on it somewhere. But if you think about like in 10 years from now, if people are like scrambling to get 5 million sats, and they're just going like, oh yeah, I feel real comfortable if I had 5 million sats right now. Like I feel like my
Mm-hmm.
life would just be taken care of. And you kind of go like, if you're one of the small holders, you're a sub whole coiner or whatever, you go, well shit, dude, I'm sitting on like 75 million sats. So like, how bad off am I? Right.
Right.
But if you got millionaires that are struggling to get just like a million sats or 500,000 sats, and you're sitting on just a huge, I mean, like, how much more do you need, right? Where you go, well, I need more so I can have more, what, junk, more stuff, more. I need a plane, or I need a this, or I need a mansion. I mean, like, all those things become very hollow pursuits, I think, under a Bitcoin standard. I think it eventually gets to a place where it's like, well, what do I value as a human being? Like I
Yeah.
value some stability, and I value like a clean, safe home for my kids, and I value like teaching my kids how to garden and how to fix things and how to repair like old cars, and like how to thrive in the world sans like the monetary system, right? Like what does it mean to be human? I think isn't, well, I send emails and stand at the water cooler and bullshit with, you know, Becky about, you know, this year's quarterly report, or this quarter's report or whatever, right? So when I think once we cross that, like someone saying, oh, I'm sitting on 300,000 Bitcoin, people are just like, why? Like it would just be like almost absurd. You kind of go, what on earth do you need 300,000? Like, what are you going to do? Buy the fucking planet? Like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about?
And
So,
that's where, like in our lifetime, 99 point something of all the Bitcoin will have been mined. And that'll be another, shift in supply where like an organization like MicroStrategy sitting on all this Bitcoin, sort of like what's the next, what do they do with that?
right. Well, I mean, it changes the rule set, right? Like, if the game we're playing right now is capture resources, right? And if the game you're playing changes from capture resources to be productive,
Yeah.
then the world looks very different, right? And so hoarding things doesn't make as much sense. Like I've got 10 houses and 3 boats, and you just go, what are you doing, dude? Like you're just wasting a bunch of you're wasting resources for no benefit other than,
Hmm.
but
It
people
did.
have that hoarding thing because of the financial incentive. And the financial incentive is for people that make things to make you feel like you need to hoard things.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think a lot of that changes, man. I think it's going to be kind of a neat place.
Yeah. They could theoretically fund and finance world changing things in every direction for the better, like however they want.
Yeah.
Who knows? But
Well,
with
maybe
hard money.
Michael Saylor will be the first person on Mars, dude.
Yeah, well, like yeah, space programs or global food, global energy, global
Yeah. Who knows, dude?
housing, whatever. It could just help feed systems that build human capability, or
Yeah.
uh, safety, whatever. It's
I
incredible to
agree,
think
man.
about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's if you think about just how incredible the world looks under debt. Like we've created a pretty bitchin' world right now, right? Especially if you're like middle class American or middle class Western European. Like life's pretty sweet, dude. And there was a great little like photojournalist thing where this lady just went around all around the world and just said, "Hey, send me a picture of your bedroom, your kitchen, your bathroom, and something else. I think it was just those three, like your primary living spaces, and then tell me how much money you make every year. And so what she found was like people that make $500 a year, their kitchen, their bathroom, and the bedroom look almost identical. It's a fucking hut. You got one pot over a fire. You got dirt floors. Like everybody, regardless of where you live. Like if you're in Latin America, you're in Africa, you're in Eastern Europe, you're in Southern U.S., wherever. If you're making 500, 5,000 a year, your living conditions are almost identical. If you scoot it up to 10,000 a year, everybody looks the same. I mean, the accoutrements are different, the decorations are different, but the core structure of it is like, this is what a middle class bedroom, 50,000 a year, this is what your bedroom looks like, this is what your bathroom looks like, this is what your kitchen looks like. And you get to $1 million a year, this is what your bedroom looks like. Doesn't matter if you're in Japan, Germany, Argentina, whatever. They're all the same. So it's like what you start realizing is like, yeah, it's not so much about where you live or your culture or anything like that. It's like everybody has the same sort of core needs, and what that looks like is very dependent on just how much money you got coming in. But the people that have managed to do really well under our current system is because of all the debt that we've created, right? So they basically just charged up a middle class lifestyle on credit cards. And anybody can do that. If I just gave you 100 credit cards and said, here, go figure out life, you would probably come up with a pretty cool life for yourself, right? But once the credit runs out, all that shit falls apart. What Bitcoin changes is it's like, well, now we're going to create that same sort of structure, that same sort of life, except it's not based on debt. It's not something that has to be paid back, and it's not a drain on, it's not a continual drag on everything you've created. It's now something that is sustaining and sustainable and can proceed forward. So I just look at the world and I go, what an amazing world we've created with debt. Can you imagine what the world looks like when we create it with productivity instead, with
Yeah.
savings? And I think it's going to be a remarkable time. I hope I live long enough to see the fruits of it all.
Yeah. I think we're going to see all the start of it for sure. And I'm so excited.
Yeah.
We've said that before, but yeah, the
Yeah.
great
Let's future for your
alignment is
kids.
upon us.
I hope so,
The
sir.
future's bright.
Yeah. Well, I think you've got to probably get going now, right?
Yeah, I'm going to have to get pushing here. We're going to travel today, so we got to
Yeah.
get things together.
Lucky you.
So
Hope your battery doesn't run out.
it's charged up, so we're ready. We'll get to Legrand.
Yeah. Close enough,
So
right?
yeah, we can charge in a couple places. So
Oh, can you? Good.
yeah,
Yeah.
along the way there's some places. So cool.
All right, man. Well, good
Well,
chatting with
awesome.
you, sir.
Yeah,
Yeah.
glad to catch you.
Yeah.
Post
And next week.
Thanksgiving hangovers and everything's good.
Yeah. Next week we'll be live, I guess.
Yeah,
All right, cool. All
looking
right,
forward
man.
to.
Well, safe journey, sir.
Sounds
And
good. You too. Thank you.
all right,
And we'll
man.
see you next week.
All right, take it easy.
Cool. Bye.